Good morning and welcome to Monday's Pro Landscaper Online Summit. Today we're focusing on the supply chain. The panel is made up of suppliers who will be key to allowing the landscape sector to get moving once the COVID-19 restrictions are lifted. Over the last few webinars, the importance of the supply chain has featured heavily, with some landscape companies saying that they cannot work now because they can't get the products and materials. Others saying that will the supply chain be able to support the potential, well hopefully potential, uplift when everyone's allowed back to work? Will all the products, plants be available? And also, what will happen to the price? Will the price be driven up? Not too much to get through in an hour that we've allocated for today. But let me introduce you to the panel. So we've got Steve McCurdy, who's the Managing Director of Majestic Trees. Got Stephen Walley, the MD of London Stone. Romy Rawlings, the Commercial Director of Vestre. Debs Winrow, Creative Director of Garden House Design. Jonathan Bourne, who did I see come back? Actually, he will be joining us hopefully sometime, from Bourne Amenity. We've got James Hewetson-Brown, who's the MD of Wildflower Turf. Giles Heap, who is the MD of CED. And finally, Richard McKenna, who's the MD of Provender Nurseries. I'm going to ask the panel to do a quick introduction, explain the current state of play within their companies. Are they still opening? Are they still supplying? Have they seen sales pick up over the last few days, few weeks? And if I can start maybe with Richard McKenna, if you start first.
We stayed open through this, very slow at the beginning, but as each week's gone by, more and more people are finding a way to work safely. And we are seeing an uptake in business every week at the moment. It's difficult, really difficult to do right, but we're doing our best.
And Steve, Richard, before we move on then, so when you say staying open, is that full staff? Is that half staff? Is that cash and carry? Is it delivery?
We have the trucks doing deliveries. We're doing 3 collections every half hour through the front of the shop with minimal contact, and we have a handful of customers coming in when all the staff go home to shop. 2 customers, 3 customers a night. We've got access to the site for an hour. So that's what we're doing at the moment.
And just one of it, is that domestic or is it commercial?
All landscapers, garden designers.
Okay, perfect. Steve Walley, let's come to you. Same question.
Yeah, thanks, Jim. So we've been sort of open for business the whole time. Things have changed a little bit, so we've had to close the showrooms, and we're not sort of doing customer collections anymore. But in terms of how it's affected us, before the lockdown, we saw quite a sort of big surge in orders, actually getting towards sort of record levels. I never thought I'd see the day when people were panic buying stone. I'm sure Giles will say the same, but that's how it felt. It felt like people were panic buying. I think since lockdown, it's it's gone down a little bit since then, but it's now started to sort of pick back up again. So we've been open the whole time. Like Richard said, it's challenging, but you have to just be take a practical approach and do the best you can, really.
Have you had any negative feedback, Steve, about being open?
I've had a little bit, to be honest. Yeah, I've had quite a bit of sort of criticism on Facebook from various people, but at the same time, I've also had a lot of support and encouragement and thanks from people. So I think it's been a bit of a mixed bag, really. But on the whole, people have been pretty supportive and thankful that we're open.
Yeah. And in terms of delivery and everything like that, is it just slowed down? Is it in terms of what your times? Have you got your own fleet? You've got your own fleet.
Yeah, we've got sort of several sort of large goods vehicles. So to be fair, we're delivering as normal. There's been no impact from us at all. Our capacity is good, and we're doing things safely and without contact. So it's been absolutely fine for us from that side of things.
Okay. So Romy, we've had a request for everyone else, so just mention where you're from as well, because they missed the introductions. They've just signed in late. So Romy, can we come to you, please?
Yes, sure. I'm Commercial Director for Vestre, We're a Norwegian company based in Oslo, but we have a manufacturing facility in Sweden, so quite complex sort of chain of custody in terms of the UK and getting things to the UK, I suppose more so than UK-based companies. And we design and manufacture street furniture, very, very much predominantly for commercial projects, occasionally some domestic.
And how's it? Are you still open? Are you still selling? Are you still delivering?
Yeah, similar to what, well, I'm not sure if it was connected, but similar to what Steve said, I think the beginning of this year was really racing. January and February, very busy. So when this hit, it was quite dramatic and instant in terms of just, you know, I literally thought my phone had been cut off. Thought there was something wrong with my email, you know, I mean, that kind of drop off overnight. But we're all working. I have colleagues in New York, they're working from home, same in Berlin, working from home. The Oslo office, actually Norway closed down before we did, so they're all working from home. I think slightly ahead of us are starting to think about things getting back to normal there. But in terms of business, no real change. And you may have seen more news actually over the weekend about Sweden's approach to this. They're basically business as usual. There are changes and there have been measures implemented, but really in terms of any kind of lockdown, it's non-existent over there. So our factory is and has been fully functioning, and we rely on third-party shippers, and at the moment that's all functioning as well. It's direct from Gothenburg to the UK, and we haven't had any issues. So we have the option of putting orders on hold. We have the option of bringing them in as planned. You know, we can cope with whatever comes along at the moment.
Lovely. Debs?
So we have a mixture of buying from UK suppliers, and our biggest supplier obviously is Rensen, based in Belgium. They are a very slick and innovative company anyway, so they put everyone at home quite quickly, and then their factories are so large that actually they were able to do split shifts, working through the night to keep production going. So we also, a question a lot of people ask about how we're going to get the product here. One of the reasons why we go with Rensen is because they have a UK-based hub in Maidstone. So actually everything comes into Maidstone anyway. On a Wednesday, it's a dedicated lorry and delivery. So everything comes in and we're seeing no delays at all there. With our other factories, we do a drop ship now. So I was very quick to actually bypass our facilities to say check a planter or a pot. We're doing extra quality checks at the supplier, and then they're shipping direct to site. And again, actually, we're getting quicker shipments than ever before because there's less on the road. But more importantly, a lot of our products to domestic customers, or it's going to a landscaper at a domestic address. And guess what? Everyone's home, so everybody's taking in the deliveries. It's been brilliant. I really don't want it to go back to normal, because then we'll get people going, oh, I didn't realise that actually a huge, you know, load was arriving on site this morning. It's like, yep, it's coming, and it will be there. So if anything, we've been criticised for being too quick and too efficient, but that's fine. I'm happy with that.
Okay. James, again, quick introduction and then how your business is.
Yeah, James Hewetson-Brown, Wildflower Turf. Good morning, everyone. Yeah, we're still going. We're growing our turf here in Hampshire, and then so we've got a sort of full production chain from starting the product to growing it and then shipping it. So we actually had a very slow start just because of the weather. So we rely on people being able to prepare their ground to take the wildflower turf, and the weather leading up to the COVID thing was dreadful. And then just as it got good, you know, that all kicked in. But we chose not to furlough or do anything like that, and just keep an eye and monitor the cash in and out, and just keep an eye on things. And we kept trading. People kept buying. The orders were coming in quite quickly, and certainly all our sort of specifying work was still very busy. So the prospect looks good for when things do get back to some level of normality. And really the financial implications have been that our turnover is definitely down for this time of year. Normally it'd be very busy, and you know, we'd be racing right now. But we've got a lot of orders. They're just a bit smaller, so we're able to monitor it, and it could be a lot worse. I have to say, when it all kicked off, we really wondered where it was going to go, and we have been very lucky to remain as we are. Really.
So, James, have you seen a difference between the commercial market and the domestic market?
Yeah, we've definitely got. We don't do a huge amount of retail work as a rule, but that's definitely gone up. We have our sort of accredited partners program, and they're about the same, but they are smaller orders, and I think they're doing the work for the retail market, and that's still busy, but with smaller orders to us. And then our sort of trade section, definitely the big projects are much quieter. We're getting some reasonable sized things, but none of those sort of really bigger projects that were lined up for now have all been put on hold.
Okay, Giles, should we come to you?
Yeah, morning everyone. I think much the same as others. We've seen we saw an instant drop when lockdown was finally announced, but like Steve and others, we also saw quite a big increase in the week before in panic buying. And as you say, Steve, I've never known anybody to panic buy a stone. The bizarre thing is I'm starting to see it again now, and I think that's in expectation of coming back out of lockdown. People want to make sure they've got the materials. Yeah. I mean, during the process, yeah, it was a scary time, I think, for a lot of people. We have 86, 87 people employed. We took the decision to furlough about 50% of them because a lot of them were working in our yards. And I think that was the right decision. Now, we've carried on working to the extent that we've had very strict controls on who can and can't come into the depots. We tend to have 1 or 2 people on site, keeping apart from each other. All our orders and processing, all the quotes have been done from people working at home where they can do. And we've sort of rotated to a degree the people who are actually on site. So we'll order, we'll pick, we'll get deliveries and collections ready, and then we give people time slots to come in. And again, it's purely, none of the showrooms are open. It's just keeping the wheels turning, I suppose, not just for us, but also for our customers and our suppliers. And that's almost as important, actually. So it's been, it's been an interesting 2 or 3 weeks. Sales have dropped. We have seen a drop on both commercial and the retail side. I don't do a lot of direct retail, but a lot of our landscapers obviously are working for retail customers. But again, as Steve said earlier, we're seeing a lot of people saying thank you, thanks for staying open, thanks for keeping the system going and keeping the industry going. And I think that's really important. And I've just seen a question from Joy. Morning, Joy. Yeah, the same does apply in Scotland. Actually, we have kept the site open to a degree. Again, we're lucky in that we don't actually have to interact with anybody physically. We can do everything by phone or by email or by credit card. So, yeah, it does apply in Scotland. They're open. All the depots are open. Everyone's available. You just need to give us a call and we'll keep it going.
Okay, Steve McCurdy, let's come to you. A bit introduction as well, quick introduction, Steve.
Okay, I'm Steve McCurdy, Majestic Trees. We did I furloughed 10 of the sales admin staff right at the very beginning out of 36 staff. Can you hear me, Jim?
Yeah, perfect.
Sorry. And just you were looking like maybe I was had the problem earlier. But anyway, we decided that we obviously as a nursery we have to grow the trees, we have to take care of stuff. We had a lot of stock that had been stuck here because of the waterlogging on sites around the country, and people want to get those trees ASAP because some jobs were January, February jobs, and so we shipped a lot the first week of lockdown to those type of customers. But the biggest problem I think we likely had in all candor is obviously the government has said, stay at home, stay at home, stay at home, hammering that in, and you had an awful lot of customers feeling that maybe they were supposed to stay home. And a lot of our associations were telling their members they should stay at home. And you had a lot of them saying, let's have to shut down our sites, etc. So you had a lot of that. And the press really fed that fear and worry, I think, big time, which caused a lot of people to be furloughed and shut down that didn't really need to shut down. And whilst safe working practice is critical through this crisis, I think that it was made far worse than it needed to be and it will cost the economy and us as individual businesses far more than necessarily had to. I mean, we've been shipping the entire time, but of course I had staff saying, "Oh, should we really go out, Steve? Should we really do this, etc." And I had a few wobbles that way. I lost one guy who was Italian, went home to Italy, and in a big hurry right before Italy was closed. But in general, we're shipping likely 50–60% of what we normally would have shipped in a week, which is way off what it should have been. And like these guys say, we were having a fantastic quarter, and we'd already hit target almost for March by the 20th of March. And if it kept going, we'd have busted it big time. So it was a big disappointment that, you know, sales suddenly came to a grinding halt. And, you know, for the next 2 weeks, sales are almost zero. But the last 2 weeks has really picked up dramatically, but still way off what it should be. I mean, we wrote 21 orders last week. Well, I'd be worrying and thinking, you know, 35 grand in sales, that's terrible. You know, we're going to bust. But right now, it's like, you know, it's light end of the tunnel. You know what I mean? So, yeah.
How are your staff managing the social distances if they're delivering? It must take. Well, you can't just have one person delivering. How are they doing that?
Well, initially we decided that we only would deliver, you know, larger projects, which you could say that's self-serving, but you know, where it's all machinery to offload it, etc., or delivery where just, you know, a guy can offload a single tree by himself. But then I quickly thought this is not going to work, so then I decided I would send 2 vehicles. And literally one guy drives in a pickup truck or that, you know, following the big truck, and that way they don't have to share the same cab. Though, of course, since the 9th of May, they're allowed to, but it doesn't really make sense, I don't think, because they're going to be the same cab all day. So I've made it that they drive, even, you know, long distance, go 2 vehicles. And I've tried to schedule, because I've been doing all the scheduling again, my old job I used to do 15 years ago. And so that I can send 2 trucks, and they're doing deliveries where they need to help each other, and they can, you know, in the same general area. Like today, I've sent 2 trucks to London, to Southeast, to W, you know, postcodes, working together all day, bouncing along. Yes.
So Jonathan, welcome back. A quick introduction and talk about your business. What's happened to date? It's okay.
So yeah, Jonathan from Bourne Amenity. We've had, I guess, a similar experience to the other guys on here. We actually have 4 businesses here across different sectors. But if I talk from a Bourne Amenity point of view, the information on the 23rd from Boris was fairly fuzzy. And we obviously had, on that evening, we had a few staff, you know, saying, are we back to work? And we were of the opinion, of course, yeah, back to work. But then the next day, we had sort of a few murmurings of people who weren't particularly sure about whether we should be here, what we should be doing. So we made a decision on that Wednesday to close down all operations, including our quarries, our trucks, our depots, just so that we could sort of take stock and put the measures in place that would make sure that the staff were happy to come in. And then we reopened about a week and a half later. I mean, we're lucky in the fact that we've got quarries and lorries and people can kind of keep their distance in there. But in terms of the office staff, we've put a couple on furlough. There's a couple working from home, and we've got basically a skeleton staff in the office. I mean, you know, like the previous man from Majestic Trees, we had a really good start to the year, despite the wet weather, and we were kind of ready to go and push on. So when this hit, it was disappointing. But after a initial slow start, we're sort of picking up a lot of sales now, and we're seeing that, you know, across various sectors, people are starting to open up. But I mean, construction industry, where we do sort of 20–30% of our deliveries, I think probably they have about 70–80% of their sites still shut. We're seeing them slowly open up, and we're now probably operating at exactly where we would be this time last year. And the main issue I really have at the moment is childcare, and a lot of my staff have young families, and they can't get to work. Basically, they can't get anyone to cover them, and they have to be at home with their children. And it's not really, we're not really set up for working at home. You know, we've got a telesales team, not an email sales team. Diverting the phones, okay, but I mean, we've got probably 30 guys on site here from various different areas, so it's not that easy to do. But you know, we see a decent recovery, and and we're sending out a lot of material. You know, 3 or 4 of our quarries are maxed out at the moment for the next week or so. We're really fortunate in the fact that we've got our own fleet of trucks, because what we have found is that a lot of the haulage companies have taken trucks off the road to save money, to save tax. So whilst we might have the material available, it's just getting out to site. So we've got our own fleet, which is lucky. So we're really fortunate in the fact that we're covered in terms of a supply chain, and we're producing and we can work safely. And you know, the most important thing is that the staff feel comfortable coming into work, that they're kept and that we're actually doing something as a business, you know, and thinking about, you know, their situations when they go home. So, you know, we're really one of the lucky ones. But over the next few weeks, it's going to be hard ramping things up with the staff being at home and being in various places. So fingers crossed, it won't affect us too much, but moving forward with the whole social distancing, which I think will be in place for, you know, the rest of this year, probably, you know, it's trying to get yourself in a position where you're not opening your doors up and letting people down. So yeah, we're lucky that we've got everything in place for now.
It feels like the business is as normal, but it's not, and it's obviously having an effect on sales across on everyone's there. Yeah. In terms of, does anyone rely on outsourcing the transportation of products? James,
we do. Yeah.
And you're not, Romy, then you're not having any issues at all in terms, once you get it into the UK, moving it in the UK?
No, although having said that, we haven't had a great deal of orders requested in the last month. 1 or 2 have gone through. We use predominantly DSV, and I've been sitting through several of their webinars on a weekly basis. So I now know more about shipping than I really need to or particularly want to. I think we're just very lucky because it comes direct within Sweden, from Sweden, direct to UK. It seems like that's one of the least affected routes. People who are shipping throughout the remainder of Europe, so obviously France, Spain, Italy, those areas where borders have been shut down, it's much more complex and I think is leading to very lengthy delays. But as far as I know at the moment, the last one I sat through, even customs here are not experiencing problems. So I'm warning people to allow maybe a few more days, but it normally takes a week, factory to site, and it's really not affected that hugely, thankfully.
James, are you having any problems with distribution?
We use a range, and we use palletways a lot for the smaller orders. And that's been good, but more recently, I think they've shut some of the hubs down, and so we're just starting to see a few slightly kind of dubious things with that end up in quite a lot of phone calls. But we ship to Belgium, and that's been quite actually easy, surprisingly easy. I didn't think it would work, but that's been all right. And for the bigger orders, we'd use bespoke hauliers. And early days, one of them rang up and said, should I be driving into the middle of London? And the kind of customers there in the early days, they were desperate to finish off the jobs, and he did, and that was okay. So yes, touch wood, so far, it's going quite well, but it is definitely one of the things for us that if it gets harder for that to work, that will have a big impact on us.
So another question that's come in on contracts or on negotiations that are already happening pre the outbreak. Has anyone had to renegotiate their contracts or supply? Has anyone had pressure from an architect to lower the prices, or you use the issue as a way of maybe getting a lower price? Come to you, Giles.
Yeah, I think bizarrely, no. I've actually seen the other. I've seen it go the other way. I've seen less negotiation down, and more clients willing to actually pay more to get the materials they need, especially when it comes to sort of bespoke products that have been ordered from abroad that are being imported. I've seen a massive uptick in orders being placed for materials from Europe when we can get them, because people don't want to wait for China, because there was obviously a big long delay. China was shut down for quite a long time. It's just starting to wake up again now. So actually, no, I've seen it go the other way. people tend to, and indeed a lot of customers, especially commercial ones, are now wanting to place deposit orders or on orders to actually sort of pre-book production slots, make sure they've got materials available. Yeah, totally the opposite. In fact, it's been completely the opposite for us.
And I guess this one's mainly for Richard and Steve. In terms of sort of managing the stock, it's not moving as quick as it was before, so you're incurring additional costs in maintaining and looking after it, and also bringing in stock at different times. How are you sort of managing what to bring in, and you know, how are you going to, I guess, are you going to swallow that additional cost that you're currently having by maintaining things, by things moving not so quick? Richard?
We brought a lot of stock in during the winter months, so we were ready to rock and roll for the spring, just as the spring was shut down. We did not ship as much during the winter, as Steve said, because it was such a wet winter. We worked really hard, and we kept all the nursery staff on to look after our stock, to pot up root balls, to weed, to feed, to water. We've had 1 day's rain in the last 5 weeks. We had the previous 5 months wet every day, felt like. So it's complete reversal. But the stock, we need to sell the stock. We need to go into people's gardens. It needs to be used. We will maintain the stock. What worries me more is next year's stock. If suppliers don't ship and clear the beds down this spring, they have nowhere to pot next year's plants. So I think we'll be okay for plants this year, but I actually think smaller plants next year could be a real problem.
We'll come on to next year. Steve, what about you then, in terms of your...
Well, we were bringing 10, 12 Arctic loads a week. Even on the week of lockdown, we still brought in the loads we had already booked to come in. And so the nursery is gram full. It's more than full, to be honest with you, because we should have shipped double what we've shipped this last month. And we, you know, they always tell me off for doing it, but I always plan of filling the nursery to the gills by the end of April, even though I'm shipping all month, so that I'll have a lot of stock in the autumn and winter ahead. So for me, there's very little I didn't bring in. There was, you know, I went on 12 different trips tagging trees across the continent. I didn't go on my 13th because of it, but so there's a little bit I didn't tag, but almost everything. So I don't think though. I think for Richard's, you know, end of the market, yes, it's more of a problem. But for me, I think it'll actually be a positive for the future, because I think people will be buying less. They'll be buying more locally and buying less from the continent, because they don't want to travel, don't want to, you know, biosecurity issues, of course, too. So I'm not too worried about that part. Okay.
I've got a question for Romy and Debs in terms of as Norway and Belgium being, the UK being additional markets to them, is there any fear for you that they would concentrate on their own market and make sure their own supplies before they start allowing the UK to have product? Start with you, Romy, if we can.
No, I can honestly say that. They have a very established market in Scandinavia. The business is 73 years old, so they will keep servicing that. It's quite seasonal in Scandinavia, because obviously if they have snow, it can be hard to install sort of November to March often. So this is peak time for them in their market. And we don't have that kind of seasonal aspect so much, so it all evens out in the end. I think what this will do is prompt us to, you know, just be able to service whoever puts an order in. We carry very little stock anyway. It's always on a sort of weekly first come first served basis, if you like, and 4 weeks of production. So everything comes out the other end according to that. Production planning allows for whoever places the order first, really. So there's definitely no protectionism there, or will be, because the establishing markets in the States here and Germany are very important to them. So they wouldn't want to do that to customers elsewhere.
Okay, Debs?
Me, yeah, very much like Romy. It's very much a first come first serve. The UK market for Renson is an extremely important one. There's been a lot of investment here to actually understand and get ahead of the domestic client actually asking for canopy products, solar shading, and with a lot of south-facing homes and gardens with huge amount of glass at the back of them, it's just the very tip of the iceberg for us here in the UK about what we need for solar shading, for outdoor living. We're going to see even more increase of that as we've got some really big commercial jobs coming through. So they've already been pre-planned and they're starting to actually place orders. The really lucky thing for us is that we are, as a Premier Ambassador, we're actually trained to go into the production system. So we actually log into Belgium's production system and actually specify all of our product on the live production system. So as soon as actually we place ready and order to go, as Romy said, we're just in a queue. And because we obviously can then specify what date we want it to come out, we all know that we've got 6 or 8 weeks from order. But if a landscaper asked us, actually, Debs, could you deliver this in 12 weeks? I can still do the order now, get it into the production system, not worry about bumps and peaks and troughs, and actually have that product on the ground here in the UK a week before the landscaper needs me to have it there. And then that gives me a week to pick it up myself and then move it across into site. So very, very good UK strong market here.
Okay, so that's maybe looking backwards a little bit at what's happened over the last couple of weeks or last couple of months. We start to look forward now. It looks like, for instance, all the builders merchants, I think from today, I think Travis Perkins said they got 450 open. I think Jewson's are following suit, and a couple of locals. So do you think there will be an increase now in landscaping, both domestic and commercial? And then the second thing is, as businesses, are you set up for a rush, or if there's a lot of pressure to finish jobs over a short period of time now, instead of jobs that should be finished in September, where they had 6 months, might only have 3 months now? Are you set up as a business to be able to meet those landscapers' needs if the big push and the big drive comes from? So start with you, Richard, on that.
We will work as hard as we possibly can. We have the materials on site. A lot of staff are very tired working through this difficult situation at the moment, and to get all the staff back on board and running to full strength, complying with legislation, will take time. And I don't actually think we can do much more. I think people might have to get used to substitutions, and possibly some jobs may just have to take longer. I don't know. This spring is normally very busy. Can we do 120%, 150%? I'm not quite sure whether the industry can take all that.
Okay, Stephen Walley.
Yeah, thanks, Jim. I mean, I think our business is very much sort of set up so we can scale quickly. So I think in terms of being able to handle an increase in demand, then absolutely we can. We've got plenty of stock in, as we always do at this time of year. We've got our own haulage. We've got a great sales team. We've got an e-commerce platform. So our business can take a lot more than it's taking now. We're quite sort of flexible as well. We can act quickly. We can make changes quickly. So if there's a big surge in demand, then 100% we'll be ready for it.
Do you think there will be a surge, Steve?
I think what we're going to see over the next sort of couple of years actually is a surge, because, I mean, who's going to be going on holiday to Italy and Spain in the next 12 months? I think there's going to be a lot more people who are now looking at their garden, who maybe didn't use it before, who are now using it a lot more. And I think as an industry, for all of us, I think we're in a sort of really good position to take advantage of that. So I think there's going to be like a little bit of a sort of garden revolution taking place in the UK. And I think over the next couple of years, we're going to see a big increase in demand, hopefully.
Okay. So James, what about you then? Are you geared up if there's a surge, and do you think there will be?
It'd be nice if there was, to be honest, a surge. But yeah, I think so. One of the things that at the moment we've got a bit of an issue with is we've got quite a mechanised system, and we've got a very expensive machine that sat there because a valve block started leaking and the part had to go to Italy, and it had just got there. So there's things like that. The machinery we've got, if that breaks down because it's working really hard and we can't get the parts, that's going to be a worry. But like the others have said, we've got a team that are geared up to, take up the challenge actually, and are looking forward to it. So I hope there'll be a bit of a surge. I hope there is a relaxing in people's ability to conduct business. That's the key. And for us, especially with our trade customers, that would be just help that surge along, I think.
Okay, Jonathan?
Hi, Jim. So for us, we were preparing for quite a big upsurge anyway. From last year, we were struggling with capacity last year, so we made a couple of big investments in the beginning of the year in terms of machinery, so that we could actually produce more topsoils and blends and that sort of thing. So we're sort of geared up for it. Whether it's going to exceed that once again, I think it probably will. We're probably, as I said, supplying sort of 20 to 30% of our sites that we were supplying before the lockdown, and we are at capacity at 2 of our sites. So as soon as those start slowly opening, it's going to be a challenge. But as I said, we've got a new couple of new big bits of machinery coming in to cope with that. So yeah, we're ready to go. I mean, we're not going to turn anything down, that's for sure. It might have to travel a little bit farther away. We might have to turn our hand to a couple more sites. But I think we're expecting a bit of a bounce back. The one thing we might struggle with is green waste compost, which the councils don't seem to be collecting it anymore. There was a really wet winter, so we take 50,000 tonne of that a year, and the smaller retailers are taking more than they were before. So at the moment, it's a bit of a question mark about that. But we're sort of ready for the increase. As I said, getting staff to answer the phones and be in the office at a safe distance could be more of the challenge. But we're sort of preparing for that well.
Okay, Steve McCurdy, the surge, and are you ready?
Yeah, I'm here. I mean, we have capacity. I mean, we have 8 trucks, Arctics, big rigids, etc. And right now we're sending like half the amount each day, which is obviously way below capacity to ship. As the future builds, we do have the staff to ship it. And the nursery will become less demanding as far as time, so we can always move some staff from nursery to shipping. Some of them work both. But I mean, I think it will come back, though it's not going to be overnight. I mean, the high end of the market, I mean, interestingly, I had a customer who called me on his mobile, and he just lost 60 million on a margin call, okay? And that's a lot of money, isn't it, that he'd had to cut.
You mix with Steve, isn't it?
And he's building a 27-acre estate, new big house, everything. I said, does that mean that I hope the new house is on hold, etc.? He said, no, me and Rachel are going to push ahead with that. He says, but what's going to be good for you, Steve? He said, an awful lot of my friends who have big fancy houses in London and live in London, they're absolutely livid and so green with envy that I have a nice place out in the country to live in with lovely landscape, tennis courts, pool, etc. And he said an awful lot of them saying, after this is over, I'm going to move to the country. So I think that end of the market might be fine, though there's going to be less of them, no question about it. But I think we may get more people moving out of London than originally thought they'd live in London forever, maybe just go weekends away.
Yeah. Okay, Giles?
Okay. I think there's a few points to this. I reference the surge. I do think that we're going to see an upward trend over the next 3 or 4 months as the lockdown sort of is reduced and people go back to work. And I agree in the long term, I think we're going to see a lot more focus on gardens and landscaping in general. Are we going to get a big surge? I don't really think so. And the reason is, before the lockdown, our industry was pretty much working at capacity. There wasn't a lot to spare. So landscapers were working 3 to 6, 12 months in advance. Contractors were, not expected to hit the ground for 6 months before they could do anything. There was just not enough capacity within the actual building side of the industry to really ramp up a lot. And I actually don't see that changing after lockdown for a long time. I do think we'll see lots of smaller projects for, as you say, people going, well, we're not going on a holiday, let's sort out the garden. But in many ways, if we have an economic crisis following this, or we have a recession, which is entirely possible, and we have to admit that, then the vast majority of the people who are now going to be staying at home because they don't want to go on holiday may also not be able to afford to go on holiday. So I think there's a lot of things going on here. I don't think it's just about, oh, everything will be fine, there'll be this big surge, there's going to be a huge demand in projects and materials. I think there will be a short-term uplift as people get back to work, catch up with the jobs they're on. I think it will flatline for a little while because we haven't really got the people to do much more than flatline. But I do think long-term, there is going to be a bit of a change in our marketplace. Stephen McCurdy's comment a minute ago about the very high end, that always survives. And those very large, expensive projects, of which there are very few in comparison to everything else, will definitely be going ahead. And I've had exactly the same conversation with people saying, yeah, we're not going to live in London anymore, we're moving outside, we're moving to the suburbs, we're moving out to the country, anything outside the M25 would be fantastic, thank you. So I actually do think there will be a bit of a surge. But again, this will all depend on what the general economic position is within the UK. If we do go through a recession, for want of a better word, then all bets are off, because we really don't know how that's going to affect things. Now, I think the government are going to have to fork out again and keep spending on infrastructure projects. And if they do that, that will help to slowly filter down through all our industries, and that will keep us going. But it's a big if. And for now, I would say, yeah, I think we will all see a bit of an upsurge in the short term, and indeed we are already seeing that. I think in the next 6 months to a year, it will be relatively flatlining. I don't think it's going to be really a big upsurge, a big uptick in sales, or maybe inquiries, but probably not sales. And I think in the long term, if the economic forecast that people are putting out there is even close to true, I actually think we'll probably see a bit of a slowdown. Not because people aren't wanting to, but because a lot of people can't afford to. So the change will be to quicker, smaller materials and things like that. And if I could just very quickly, there was a question asked by Joseph Blair over in Ireland about issues servicing Ireland. I don't know how many others here actually have much to do with Ireland. We do.
Hands up if you do.
Yeah, okay. So I don't know about you guys. We've seen a small issue in that it's been tricky to get people to adhere to social distancing, shall we say. But generally speaking, the Irish market's still going in the same way that GB is as well, I suppose.
Just the questions come up, and it's quite an important one as well, because everyone, you know, is talking that the market's sort of a bit more relaxed maybe now than it was beforehand, and the government are saying actually at the moment we're in a critical time. And if you look at what the news come about Singapore about the second phase of the virus, do you not think there is the way that we're talking and the way that the market is moving, we're leaving ourselves really open for maybe a second phase and a harder one where a second close down might have to come back in? Do you think we're still slightly too early to have as much work going on as currently is? Don't know who. James, do you want to take that?
I was hoping you'd pick someone else, actually. I think...
so was everyone, James.
Well, it's obviously a major concern, isn't it? I mean, we don't really know anywhere where this is going or where it's going to end up. And I suppose, yes, we've just got to all be concerned. But I think also there's got to be business continuing. We can't constantly put the business on the back burner, I wouldn't have thought. So, yeah, who knows is the real answer. But I suppose time's going to tell, and you can ask someone else.
Okay, Stephen, Walley, come back on that.
Yeah, I think what we need to realise, Jim, is that this isn't going away for quite a long time until there's a vaccine in place. Now, if you sort of believe what you hear in the media, that could be 12, 18 months. So I think what we're going to see is that as a country and an industry, we've got to get our heads around this new norm. And the things we're doing now, the sort of social distancing measures we're all taking, they're going to be around for a long, long time. And the economy can't stop. there's as much danger to life by the economy stopping than there is by coronavirus. So the economy cannot stop. So we've got to find ways of making sure we protect vulnerable people. But if you can find a way to work, then you've got a responsibility to do so. I think one thing that's not been mentioned yet is how lucky we are as an industry in that we can work outside safely. Now, you imagine if you were, a dentist, or you owned a restaurant or a health club. These guys are absolutely, well, no, because you get the clippers out and give it a once over. But these guys are facing like indefinite closures of their businesses. So I think we need to realise how bloody lucky we are actually as an industry.
Romy, do you want to have a go at that one in terms of social distancing and relaxing too early?
Yeah, I agree completely with Steve. I think, there's a real tension here between what we all want to do as, people at the, like it or lump it, base of the supply chain, if you like, and keeping the economy going, which is critical. I think, I've lived through more recessions now than I care to mention. And I worry that this is another one coming for obvious reasons. I don't think anyone could deny that that's got to be a concern. And, we know that the construction sector, which we're all somehow kind of part of, is often a precursor to that recession. And the last one, certainly, that seemed to be what really sort of precipitated it becoming far worse. We know if the construction sector goes down, that's much more likely to lead us to recession throughout the UK. And I think that's why there's probably quite a lot of pressure, and that's probably why the government is releasing and relaxing to some degree on construction sites. I think it's possibly behind their vagueness really around the issue. So we have to be careful. We can't put our self-interest first and keep pushing, even if we can keep going and supply and do all the things we know we want to do. And at this time of year, we would all be crazy, madly doing. But yeah, the economy is really important. I think we have to find a way, if it is 12 months, 18 months, to work safely and support everybody in a way that we can. And it is a supply chain. We are all just one link in that chain. It goes right up to the client. It comes right back down to us. And one bit of that, whether it's a merchant or a main contractor or a ground worker or whoever it is, that's broken. And none of us can function. So I think we need to think in those terms.
Okay. Steve McCurdy, last word on this?
Well, I said at the very beginning, when they were talking about 5% cut in GDP, I said it's going to be 30% at least for this quarter, no ifs and buts about it. And that was 4 or 5 weeks ago, and now they're talking about 35% cut in GDP for the quarter. And if you look at the Great Depression, it was only 15-16% drop in GDP. So obviously that's for a year, not for a quarter, but still, it just shows you how bad this has been for the economy. And 7 million people died from starvation in the Great Depression. And I think there'll be far more people will die from other health issues than coronavirus, because they didn't get the cancer treatment, didn't get other treatments, because NHS just shut the doors on practically everything else, which I think was a bit.
No, they claim they haven't.
They claim they haven't, but an awful lot of people I know have had their stuff cancelled, etc. So I think that's a huge problem, and there's going to be an awful lot of people. Mental health problems are going on forever, and then you go to the third world, like Africa, etc. You can imagine the starvation and lack of medical care when it really gets going down there. So I think absolute social distancing. Yes, there might be a second wave, but the economy will crash, and we'll be paying for not only taxes, but a lot of industries. We talked about guys that are in small business like restaurants, etc. You can imagine if an airline or cruise industry, those type of guys, they're just destroyed for years.
Okay, so I'm going to somehow try and bring it back into landscaping in a way. So I remember when we first got involved in the industry, people were sort of saying it was coming out of the recession, 2011. And there was a lot of pressure in terms of landscapers, in terms of their cash flow, in terms of the credit limit they were going to get. And so part one of the question is, are you looking at how you manage, or are you going to change the way that you manage your credit limits? And then on the second side of that, what do you think in terms of your pricing strategy will happen over the next 6 months to a year? Start with Richard.
First for everything. I don't think there's going to be an immediate knock-on effect. I think the stock we have in the system is the stock we have in the system. Pricing strategy going forward, that's going to be based on currency, that's going to be based on availability, it's going to be based on demand. A lot of product is made to order, like Jonathan and people, their products are made from quarries or manufactured to order. Our plants that some of us, that Steve sells or I sell, it could be propagated or grown 20 years ago to be sold. So I think we work on a much longer timeline if something is available or not available. So I think the knock-on effect from the last recession was a lot of trees were not propagated, a lot of material was not grown for 2 or 3 years, and then 4 or 5 years after that there was a shortage of supply. So I think it takes a much longer timeline to see an effect of what's going on production.
Just on that, Richard, though, in terms of if you can't bring plants in from Italy or from Belgium or wherever, isn't that going to have an effect on the amount of stock you've got and the variety of stock that you've got, which may mean there's going to be a surge in the price you charge?
Well, up to now, last week we had a truckload from Italy. The week before that we had a truck from Ireland. I don't see any shortage of supply at the moment. The stock for this season is sitting on nurseries around Europe or in the UK ready to be sold. We just need to get it out into people's gardens and into the landscape safely.
Okay. So, Steve Walley, then in terms of, do you think you're going to have restricted stock and, the cash limit or the credit limit that you'll have for supply for new landscapers or landscapers?
I think at the moment our stocks are really good. Italy is dispatching again already. I think manufacturing over there is opening up quite soon too. India are going to reopen as well. So I don't see any issues with stock, to be honest. In terms of your first question, Jim, about credit, I mean, 80% of our customers, they pay when they place the order. The other 20% is credit, and that is insured by the bank, by HSBC. So, as long as HSBC doesn't change their terms, we will continue to offer credit to our customers, and I don't see any change there, to be honest. I think in terms of pricing, the biggest threat to price increases is probably currency exchange. We obviously source from India, Italy, Germany, a little bit from China as well, but we hedge our currency for sort of 12 months. So our currency rates are fixed until January 2021. So there's zero chance of our prices increasing between now and January. I suppose in January, theoretically, if there's a big crash in the currency, then we might have to look at it. The pound's pretty stable at the moment. It seems to have been stable for a while. I think we've frozen our prices for the past 2 years now, and we are still working on the basis of freezing them again for a third year in January. So our approach to cost increases is find savings and efficiencies in our business to avoid passing them on. That's always our first port of call. So at the moment, we've got no plans to increase prices, and there's no reason for us to do so. And if that need should arise, then we will work very hard on our business to find the savings first before we even think about passing anything on to customers. And that's our sort of general business philosophy anyway, corona or no corona.
Okay, lovely. Jonathan, credit terms, pricing?
Yeah, thanks, Jim. Credit terms wise, I mean, we unlike I think it's Steve, the last gentleman, we 95% of our customers buy on credit. We have that obviously insured as well. And we haven't really heard much from the insurers about reducing terms. They're normally quite happy to just cut terms overnight and reduce credit. And we haven't seen anything like that. I think it's too early at the moment to really tell how they're going to react. And if this just chugs along and nothing really gets better and there's no sign of a vaccine, then things will get tighter and tighter. But I mean, we, in terms of supply, we talk to suppliers about extending terms, and we're sort of managing by having difficult conversations with suppliers and customers alike. But we're seeing the credit terms being held on to for now. In terms of pricing, we're in a sort of low margin competitive industry as everyone else. So we sort of go from, it's quite a fluid pricing situation. And I guess if there is less work or be a more competitive marketplace, I guess, and then our margins will have to probably slim down even more. So I think it's just too early to tell right now in terms of what's going to happen. But for now, things are holding up. But I can see it changing quite rapidly if we don't see, this lockdown. If we don't get out of it successfully and we go back into it, then things will change. And I guess banks and insurers will get a little bit more itchy with their trigger fingers with credit terms.
Okay, Giles, do you want to have the last word on this?
Okay, I think I'll start with the credit side. Like Jonathan, we have quite a lot of people on credit accounts. I've seen a little change, maybe a little change in attitude from customers on how they pay. But more interestingly, I've actually seen greater pressure from suppliers for people to pay, not just on terms, but actually early. And indeed, moving forward, I don't know if it's the stone industry particularly. A lot of our materials come from countries that are and have been struggling for many years. I'm starting to see quite a lot of suppliers now asking for payments in advance, which we've never had before. Now, how that pushes down the supply chain, I really don't know, and whether or not it will last or not, again, I really don't know. But I can kind of get it. I kind of understand it. These guys don't work on large margins like ourselves. They don't have the kind of welfare states that we have to look after their staff. So, they have 3 months, 3 weeks or 6 weeks where they're not allowed to work, and especially in the case of China and some parts of Europe as well now. Then they are struggling. As suppliers, are struggling to pay their staff. They're struggling to keep these guys fed. So they're desperate to work, but conversely, they're also desperate to get cash in. And from that point of view, I'm starting to see a bigger increase in not demands, but maybe requests, if possible, for deposits to be paid on jobs. And I actually think as things get busier, we'll probably see more of that, because the suppliers, the factories, the quarries will be able to turn around and go, I'm sorry, but it's a seller's market now. If you want your project, if it's bespoke, then you need to put your money down. You need to book your slot. And I do actually think that will probably happen for a little while. It's not with all of them, but certainly with a lot. As far as the UK side is concerned, we had credit insurance for quite a long time, but it got to a point where, as the issues surrounding Brexit, which by the way is something else we've not covered, our insurance companies decided to make life very difficult for our customers, very difficult indeed. And we actually took the decision to stop insuring our credit risk at the back end of last year, because it became quite apparent that if there was any real issues, most of the time the insurance companies don't pay out. It's as simple as that. But what they do is they restrict practice. They restrict the decisions that you can make as a business owner to be able to facilitate your clients actually having credit, if that is the right thing for them to do. I suspect we'll see a bit of a clampdown on that in the UK. But interestingly, I also think that on the commercial side, we'll see a bigger clampdown from the government on main contractors who are slow to subcontractors as well. So it's all going to change a little bit. Whether it will change in a big way for us to really care about, I'm not so sure. But I do think there's going to be some changes. You asked me about pricing. And we have a very fluid pricing strategy in that if we need to increase them, we will do, but only because we have no choice. Conversely, if we can reduce them, we do as well. So again, this is going to depend an awful lot on supply chain, a huge amount on the exchange rates, but also on the shipping, on logistics, what's available, what's not available. As we come towards the end of the year, I mentioned the B word earlier, I'm going to mention it again. We are coming... Last time. Okay. Brexit is still happening, and apparently is still happening the end of this year, unless Boris takes his foot off the pedal, which I don't think he can do politically. So we don't really know what's going to come. And I suspect that unless there is a deal that is, shall we say, positive for the UK and seen as such by the rest of the world, not just by the politicians, then yeah, exchange rates could take a bit of a hammering. So pricing wise, yeah, for now, it's fairly consistent. In the long term, it's going to be a little bit more flexible, but I don't think that's down to the COVID issues. I think it's more down to more geopolitical and economy issues.
Okay, fine, lovely. So we are, well, we've run out of time. I'm just going to quickly go around with everyone, so a couple of minutes each on, in terms of, as a supplier, how would you want to work with the landscapers to make the transition out of the restrictions better and smoother, and how can landscapers work with you in a way that allows you to fulfill what you need to do in advance? What kind of information would you like? And then just a final sort of closing statement from you about what you think that the market will look like this time next year. So Debs, we'll start with you. Your final word?
I think actually listening to one of the supply chains that I think we've missed is actually the supply chain, not from us as suppliers to the landscaper, but the landscaper has his own supply chain down to the customer. And I think this is really crucial for us as suppliers to be understanding that they need to get money from the client before they can pay us. So help them with very good pricing, help them understand what delivery charges might be so that they can actually be really confident in passing that pricing on to their customers. One of the other things we've done is obviously on our big buildings, there's an awful lot of deposit. There's a 50% deposit, and that can be up into the tens of thousands. So what we've actually done is given the confidence to the landscaper that if they want to actually get the customer to talk to us directly and pay us directly, then they can. Because sometimes for a landscaper to cash flow a very large amount of money is going to be tough for them. So this is a relationship we're building with the landscapers even more now, is that Rod or I will actually go to meet the client with the landscaper. They understand the financials, and then actually the client is paying us the deposit. You know, they're feeling confident. It's a lot of money for a client to pay if they're buying materials up front. So just be aware of that, I think, with the supplier. Can you help them by actually helping them cash flow things?
Okay, James?
Well, I suppose what hasn't been perhaps said today is the value of the green space and the recognition of that value and the solace people have taken in it in parks and greenery in general. And I think from that point of view, working with the designers and the landscapers, you've just got to be taking that on board and taking comfort from that, I suppose. And also, I've listened to all these summits, and they've all been excellent. And last week, Adam White finished with climate change and biodiversity. And again, working with designers and landscapers, I think they are going to become, if you like, almost this new coronavirus, in as much as the coronavirus at the moment is instant and right in our faces, but they're long-term issues that are going to give much more significant problems in a way, and we as a landscape industry have a part to play in that. So designing those type of things and making sure we're concentrating on that, I think is the way forward for all of us, and we should take solace from that. Almost to the point that we're all very, very grateful and dependent on the NHS in the future. Would it be too much to expect to think that the landscape industry can do that for climate change and biodiversity?
Okay, Romy?
Yeah, sorry, I can't remember more than one point at a time. I'm having to refer back to my notes. So, yeah, working with the supply chain. I've also watched. I also watched the summit last week, and I think one of the key messages that came out of that was we need to work more closely together. So, you know, that Landscape Institute and Barley, whatever those relationships are, I think the guys you had on last week, you know, that came across loud and clear. And in a sector that's known to be particularly adversarial normally, particularly between often suppliers, designers, contractors, I really hope that this means we pull together and the supply chain that I mentioned earlier, you know, is held in place. I think that's critical. This time next year, yeah, I would agree absolutely with James. The two things we talk about at Vestre more than anything are creating social meeting places, that's now more critical than ever, and also sustainability and climate change and the power that we have to make a difference. Ironically, a month ago, I took on 2 new guys here in the UK, and I've spent the last, I know, I've spent the last, I've spent, the poor things, honestly, I've spent the last month inducting them remotely. It's been really tough, but I hope that positivity and that look to the future, you know, feeds through for everybody. And this time next year, I really hope that we're all out there, fully functioning, whatever that means. But yeah, I hope that for all of us, really.
Lovely. Giles?
Okay, yeah, I think the question, what can landscapers do for suppliers? Guys, give us as much warning as you can. Okay, you know, things are going to get difficult. Demand is going to be difficult, and supply may be difficult. Now, whether or not we have to stock is one thing. Whether or not we can get it to you is another. I think the important thing is you need to know, let us know as early as possible what you're going to want and when you're going to want it. And that doesn't mean 24 hours. Don't get me wrong. We can deliver in 24 hours. We can all do that. But if you're talking about a few hundred square meters or some bespoke bits and pieces, give it time. Okay, try not to rush us. And more importantly, if you don't rush, it's probably going to cost you less as well. So as much time as possible would be great. If you have concerns or issues, Debs made a really good point earlier about helping the cash flow, not just for you guys, but for your clients. Talk to us. If you think you've got concerns or you'd like to look at it doing it a different way, I think we're all going to be quite happy to sit here and try and find a new way of working in the new climate. You know, it's a very strange situation. This is something none of us have had to deal with. We don't have all the answers, but hopefully collectively the hive mind might. So keep the conversation going, keep talking to us. That would be really good. Long-term view. Who the hell knows? I mean, seriously, I have no idea. I know I'm not going to Spain for a while. I think actually, again, Steve what he said earlier, we're really lucky in this industry is that we're mostly outdoors, and thank God for that. I think the long-term view is we are, as an industry, going to become more important to the populace at whole. I think it is now our time to stand up, be counted, and really raise the bar, raise the profile, and make sure that whatever it is that we do it to the best of our ability. Be honest with people, be straight with people, get the job done well, and I think we will all hopefully pull through this in a better place than we are now. There's a question Joy put up earlier about the Scottish situation. I know we haven't covered, I know we're very close to time. Joy, look, yes, Scotland is open for business, just not if you listen to Nicola. A lot of suppliers are working, they are working under very strict and very careful controls. I know we are and have been for quite some time. So I think the best thing to do is if you want supply from somewhere, ring your suppliers up and ask them and have a chat with them. If they can't do it safely, then they shouldn't be doing it. One thing we all need to say this is staff. All right, our guys have been through hell the last 6 weeks in one way or another. They've either been working from home, which is a new trick for all of us. They've either been on site on their own. They've been dealing with customers who don't know what's going on. I want a big shout out to my staff, and I think everybody else here, to say thank you so much for doing what you've done. You've really kept all of us going. Hopefully it won't be too much longer.
Thanks, Giles. Steve, McCurdy?
Well, getting back to Giles's, the big B, I think Brexit is going to be a walk in the park compared to coronavirus. So I think, you know, whatever side the argument is, let's just get it over with, because we don't need any more uncertainty if the can is kicked down the road. And let's move on. But I think what's really going to be important for the landscapers moving forward is they need to look at the site. They want delivery to tree pit, any of these different services. They need to think, how can we make this work and still keep the distance, you know? And I think we can work together and we can make most things work fine. But I think, you know, in closing, I mean, I think what we really need to emphasize to the landscape community is the poor guys. I mean, fortunately, I grow trees, which, you know, I haven't sold a lot I should have sold, but at least I'm dying. They're going in the skip. But a lot of guys who grow perennials, annuals, herbaceous, those poor guys, some of them are going to go bankrupt. No ifs and buts about it. And if I ask anything for UK landscapers to do, please buy your plants, not your herbaceous from me, obviously, but buy UK grown herbaceous. If you don't normally buy it from a UK grower, why don't you reach out to them and ask, Richard can obviously supply UK, though he does buy some on the continent, I know, but hopefully he's buying a lot more from UK growers, because those poor guys are absolutely hammered and will go bust if we don't help them out. And I think, hopefully for the year ahead, hopefully we'll be back to 2019 levels of business by next year. But it's no question this year will go backwards. We're very fortunate if we don't.
Perfect. Jonathan?
Thanks, Jim. I think I just need to just echo what's been said before, and especially Giles, in terms of, lead times from landscapers in terms of letting us know as early as possible what they need and when they might need it. A little bit of a relaxation maybe in terms of methodology and how things can get to site in terms of restrictions on site, making it as easy as possible to get our materials into position. And I think that we'll have a streamlining of our processes and a streamlining of the way our office staff work, and everything about the business we'll learn a lot of lessons from this in terms of stripping back what works and what doesn't work. And hopefully that'll mean a more efficient supply chain, which will benefit the industry moving forward. But again, it's where we're going to be, I have no idea. But what we do know is that the staff are what makes things tick over for us, and putting them in hard positions and then reacting in very resilient ways is what we've seen. So hopefully this will give us a chance to sit back and appreciate the staff, appreciate we work in an extremely creative and important industry in terms of what we're producing, and maybe just take stock of what we do have and how we do work, and use that to work more together, communicate between competitors, suppliers, and open those lines up so that we're all working together to create a sort of better working environment and cheesily world. So yeah.
Excellent, thank you. Richard?
It's all been said. Thank you, everybody. I got bit in. I couldn't agree with what's been said. The most important thing for Provender the last few weeks has been our staff. They have been incredibly resourceful, adaptive, working from at home, difficult in its own right. We are trying to respond to that and going forward, and finding laptops at the 12th hour. But yes, everybody's been amazing. I do think going forward, the industry is going to change. I do think all these people have learned how important green, people who've been working at home, living in their gardens, living in their houses, green space, be their own, be it communal, is really, really, really important going forward. Greta's gone quiet right now, but it's still the same noise after this. We work in a fantastic industry. We're outside. We can deliver a lot more than gardens. We can deliver peace of mind, mental stability. We just do so much more than green gardens.
Excellent. And finally, the final word to you then, Steve.
Thanks, Jim. So yeah, I agree with what Giles said. We can cope, but more notice is always good. It allows everyone to plan and to be more efficient. My sort of closing statement would be that I'm a very positive person. I see problems, they're there to be addressed, and I think they create opportunities. So what I would say is to landscapers, designers, don't panic, don't be overwhelmed by all this. Look at your business, look hard at your business. Find cost savings, find efficiency savings, change the way you work, because there's never been a better time to look at everything that you do and make really sort of positive change for the future. I think we also need to realise that Brexit, coronavirus, the biggest thing is the environment still. We cannot forget that, and any business out there who has allocated budgets for the environments, if you can, ring fence them, because the environment makes Brexit and Corona look like a duck walk. They're minor issues compared to global warming. So I think everyone needs to not forget that fact. The biggest threat we still face is global warming,
Lovely. Thank you very much.
For my closing message.
Thank you. Well, a couple of things for me then. First of all, massive thank you for the panel. Thank you very much for your insight and for sharing that. A couple of things that have come clear. One that I'm going to pick up from our very first one of these seminars, where John Melmo said, don't pass the pain back. So it's like making sure that you're paying the people you need to pay at the right times. If not, have the communication. Another thing that comes through completely at every single one of these is that people need to talk. People aren't isolated. Everyone else has got the same problems as you've got. So the more people are communicating, the more people are talking, the better it is for the industry. And I think the third thing is, let's not forget where we were in January and February about how important green space was. And as soon as we can, let's start promoting that and pushing that as an industry rather than as individuals. I think the better it is. So again, thank you all very much. Thank you very much for everyone that tuned in and listened. I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you all very much. Thank you, panel. Thanks. Cheers.